U.S. Marines discovered an incredible truth: old veteran S. orange rifle hit a 4,000 m target. Jack Turner sat silently at the edge of his rickety porch, the desert sun casting long shadows on the weathered wood. The newspaper headline that had sent shockwaves through the town sprawled across his lap, but it felt more like a dagger twisted into his gut. Incredible truth? He muttered, scoffing. Those words felt like nails to the memories he wished to bury. He'd spent his life distancing himself from his past, a past roped tightly with courage and sacrifice. Now, he found himself wondering what had prompted the local journalist to yank his name back into the spotlight at such an old age. His grandson's dismissive laughter echoed in his mind. "What do you know about being a hero, Grandpa?" The word stung, memories prickling as he recalled the fragile family dynamics that had disintegrated during the years he'd let pride build walls. When did being a veteran become a punchline? The weight of the past pushed him deeper, wrenching his conscience. A young woman, bright-eyed Emma, had cornered him at the auto repair shop, fishing for truths buried beneath cynicism, but all he felt was the pressure of revealing the man he once was impeccably sharp but now a rusted relic. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension built as Jack fingered the orange rifle that hung in the garage, its gloss now dull from years of disuse. He felt his age creeping through his bones like an unwelcome breeze. Emma's search for truth had awakened something in him, a yearning for recognition intertwined with the paralyzing fear of vulnerability. What if she unveiled a past too raw to expose? What if his children remained indifferent, locked in their own lives, forever ignorant of the burdens he carried? Days slipped by in a haze of uncertainty. He drew up sketches of stories he'd tell, moments threading bravery and loss, wondering if they would bridge the chasm in his family's understanding. But often, he hesitated. Would they see a soldier or a frail old man lost to time? Would the weight of his experiences alter their view? The questions plagued him relentlessly, swirling in his mind like a whirlwind of insecurities, blotting out the once vibrant sense of pride he had in sharing his story. The pulse of desperation clawed at Jack's throat. Every moment spent mulling over the idea of confessing the depths of his service felt like an interrogation. And with each confrontation, he envisioned the sting of disappointment on Emma's face should his truths not resonate. The fear of failure loomed larger than the honor he once wore like a badge over his heart. What would it take to bridge that relentless divide, to have his family understand who he was not just as a soldier but as a man? As Jack prepared himself emotionally, the silence of his home echoed louder, cloaked in the shadows of secrets and longing. Just when the air seemed heavy with impending outcomes, Emma uncovered something that shook the very foundation of their shared narrative, unraveling connections neither had anticipated. There it was, a thread that could weave the past to the present, sparkling with potential yet thick with consequences. What truths might emerge, and would they mend bridges or burn them irrevocably? The stakes were mounting, and in that moment, Jack stood on the precipice of his own awakening, wondering if he could finally confront the judgment of history and the ghosts that loomed in untold stories. The sun dipped lower, casting hues of gold across the land as Jack sat on his porch, the air thick with the weight of uncertainty. Each whisper of the desert wind felt like a reminder of the stories left untold, the rifle looming like a specter in the background, a tether to his past that he couldn't shake. Emma's unexpected visit replayed in his mind, her earnest eyes questioning him about his service, about bravery and sacrifice. Jack couldn't help but admire her determination, a stark contrast to his own frail state. He stood up, driven by an invisible force, and walked toward the garage. Dust motes danced in the fading light as he approached the orange rifle. The symbol of his youth and valor, its once shiny surface matched the glimmer of unresolved stories aching to be told. Jack pulled the rifle from its resting place and studied it closely, reminiscing about the distant echo of gunfire and the thrill of commanding precision. Would he dare share these memories with Emma? The mere thought churned a tempest within him. Could I really open up, he contemplated aloud, the words hanging in the stillness. The shame of vulnerability, the fear of judgment, clashed with a budding sense of responsibility to share, to teach. He could see Emma's genuine pursuit for understanding. Perhaps she was seeking validation of her own feelings about courage and conflict. But was he ready to illuminate the dark corners of his existence? Every narrative he avoided had formed walls around him, and yet here she was, a chisel ready to break through them. He glanced at the rifle with new perspective. It wasn't merely a weapon, it represented every choice he made during years of struggle. Could he frame those stories not merely in the passion of warfare, but in the complexity of human experience? As doubts swirled, he made a decision. Tomorrow, he would invite Emma for coffee, a casual gesture that could serve as the spark to light the fuse. The plan felt precarious, yet liberating. Reciting the words in his head, he envisioned them flowing naturally, stories of camaraderie, the heart-stopping moments, and even the regrets. Memories of fallen comrades beckoned to him, nudging him gently to honor their sacrifices alongside his own. Jack knew maintaining the facade of indifference was no longer an option. He couldn't wear the armor of silence any longer, it was eroding the very essence of who he was. He began to feel a shift, a burgeoning sense of purpose, as if the intention to confront his past brought him one step closer to healing. But as the sun set, painting shadows around his feet, an unsettling thought lodged in his mind. What if our past sins can't be reconciled? He feared that sharing might not yield acceptance, but scorn. Would Emma find him hallowed or hollow? The pressure mounted quietly, gnawing at his resolve as he prepared for the conversation that might redefine his family landscape. When he finally turned to enter the house, the orange rifle felt heavier in his hands, sluggish with the enormity of unspoken truths. Tomorrow loomed pregnant with possibility, a chance to unveil fragments of a past he kept tangled. Yet, doubts coiled like serpents, whispering warnings that this threshold could lead to either redemption or ruin. Jack's heart raced as he stepped inside. What awaited him during that innocent coffee date could unravel everything he thought he knew about his life, his family, and himself. The moment was imminent. Could he truly unwrap the layers of his being to embrace the inevitable confrontation? The answers lay just beyond the horizon of his courage. Would he reach them? The next morning, Jack awoke to a chill in the air that contrasted sharply with the intense pressure weighing down on him. Even the sunlight seemed tentative, creeping through the blinds as if questioning whether it should illuminate the truths he would soon face. He stared at the ceiling, thoughts racing as if in competition with the dawn. What if he faltered? The coffee date loomed large in his mind, a prospect both thrilling and terrifying. He envisioned Emma sitting across from him, her expectant gaze prompting him to articulate what he had buried so deeply. A knot formed in his stomach, but the thought of remaining silent felt more dreadful than baring his soul. As he prepared the coffee, every action felt amplified, grinding the beans, pouring the water, watching the swirl of steam rise from the mug. Each motion became a ritual, a prayer that he would find the right words when the time came. They were just words, after all. But for Jack, they represented doors to a past he couldn't escape and a future he desperately wished to navigate. He caught a glimpse of himself in the kitchen window. The man he had become was weary, shadowed by the weight of unspoken stories. He grabbed the rifle from its resting place on the shelf, once again feeling the heft of it, but this time around, it served as both reminder and catalyst. Inspiration surged through him. Those stories belonged not merely to him, but to everyone who had fought beside him, fought for something bigger than themselves. Could sharing them prove to be a form of honor, rather than a burden? As the clock ticked down the minutes, he found himself pacing, internal contrasts colliding within him. On one hand, there was the man filled with ashes of regret, on the other, the man yearning for liberation, for validation. The duality of his emotions churned violently, a tempest turning within. Shortly before Emma arrived, a sudden thought stopped him in his tracks. What if this moment wouldn't just uncover his past, but reshape who he was? Inviting Emma into the depths of his experience might help to bridge the chasm where shame had resided for so long. He smoothed back his hair and took in a breath, attempt after attempt to steady his racing heart. When she knocked on the door, he nearly lost his nerve. Each heartbeat pounded like a drum roll, announcing the impending change. He opened the door and was greeted by Emma's bright smile, unshadowed by the weight he felt pressing upon him. "Ready for some coffee?" she asked, her enthusiasm a raw contrast to the turmoil brewing within him. "Yeah, let us do this," he replied, the words escaping before he could second-guess himself. As they settled into their seats, a comfortable lull enveloped the atmosphere. He poured coffee into her cup, his mind flickering back to moments of camaraderie. People believed in each other in ways that outshone the darkness surrounding conflict. "Jack," she began, a serious undertone weaving through her voice, "I'm really grateful for you agreeing to this." The sincerity in her eyes struck deep. Here it was the moment he had been waiting for, yet dreading. "I wanted to talk to you about something," he said, voice shaking slightly. It felt critical not just to speak, but also to choose his words carefully. As he opened up about his past experiences, detailing moments that any storyteller would consider embellished, Jack's heartbeat thundered in his chest. Speaking brought a liberation, but also that persistent threat of fear. What if sharing didn't liberate him but chained him further to his regrets? Jack laid the rifle beside him, its presence grounding him. "This meant everything once," he said finally, voice breaking slightly. "But I've hidden so much behind it." Emma leaned in, absorbing his words. He could see the determination in her eyes, a reflection of his own, urging him forward while also pulling him in deeper. But as he revealed another layer of his experience, a chill swept through him. He was crossing a threshold, and with each word, he ventured further into uncharted territory. What if certain truths shattered the connection he had with Emma? The weight of honesty pressed down on him as more fragments of his story emerged, leading somewhere he had not anticipated. As he prepared to unveil even deeper sentiments, he caught a glimpse of Emma's unwavering gaze, unyielding, patient, but with a flicker of uncertainty that mirrored his own. The moment had arrived. He was both terrified and exhilarated. Would he summon the strength to share the truths that haunted him the most, or would the sting of vulnerability wrap around him one last time, leaving him to question the aftermath? With each heartbeat, a thread tightened around the truth, creating a tapestry of revelations he had yet to grasp. What lay hidden in the corners of his narrative remained uncertain, but the intention to uncover them was indomitable. And just as Jack was about to reveal the story that had nibbled at his courage all morning, a sharp knock on the door broke the moment, shattering his fragile resolve. The unexpected arrival could alter everything in an instant. Who was it? What awaited him next? The answers hung by a thread, battling against the past he sought to confront. The knock echoed through Jack's consciousness like a thunderclap, shattering the delicate moment he had been nurturing. He turned toward the door, both perplexed and apprehensive, heart racing in sync with each beat of uncertainty. What had felt like a defining pivot now strained under the weight of interruption. Instinctively, he faltered, momentarily rooted by the fear of what lay beyond the threshold. "Do you want me to get that?" Emma asked, her eyes flickering with a mix of curiosity and concern. Jack inhaled sharply, masking his hesitation with a measured calm. "Yeah, I'll check. Just give me a second." He felt her gaze on him, piercing and supportive, yet somehow tinged with doubt, almost as if she sensed the wall he was still attempting to tear down. As he approached the door, every step felt like a gamble. Would it be someone from the past? A specter of the life he was striving to leave behind? The knock came again, insistent, a reminder that life was ready to intrude, whether he was prepared or not. When he opened it, Jack was faced with an older gentleman sporting a navy blue cap emblazoned with the insignia of a veteran's association. The man stood tall, a strong presence shadowed by years of history etched across his face. "Jack Daniels?" the old man asked, voice gruff yet somehow warm. "Yeah, that's me. Name's Mike. I served with you back in 03. Thought I'd drop by." Cold fingers of his past curled around Jack's heart, squeezing tightly. He hesitated, struck by a wash of emotions. Here was a living reminder of the war, the bonds forged in heat and chaos, but also of sacrifices made ones he had buried deep. He glanced back toward Emma, who was observing the exchange with a mix of bewilderment and concern. "Mike, come on in," Jack forced out, stepping aside. The man entered, his gait steady and commanding, but with a softness that spoke of shared understanding. As Mike settled into a chair, Jack's pulse quickened. This visit could change everything, the very equilibrium of the vulnerable honesty he'd been attempting to construct with Emma. Once they were seated, Mike leaned forward, his next words weaving a thread of nostalgia into the air. "Heard through the grapevine you've been keeping to yourself. We've got a reunion coming up, and we need you there." Jack's bubble of resolve began to deflate. The mention of a reunion cracked open a floodgate. Memories surged back, piercing through with vividness. The laughter during rare moments of joy, the unshakable bond in adversity. Yet, the shadows followed, lives lost, regrets etched in every silence. Jack started, but the words tangled before they even left his lips. The sense of duty fought against the raw honesty he had almost embraced with Emma. "Listen, we have a lot to talk about. I know you've got your story and you need to share it, not just hide behind it," Mike said, unwavering. Jack clenched his fists, the weight of Mike's appeal pressing heavily against the walls he had just begun to dismantle. Could he truly share the turmoil that had haunted him all these years? Would Mike's presence shuffle his emotional cards, rendering his newly found courage impotent? Emma was still there, a silent sentinel of understanding. He could almost sense her hope for him, the tether of trust that had begun to lace their connection. Would he dare to let Mike pull him back into the past when he had finally taken a step into the light? "Jack?" Mike's voice snapped him back, earnest yet insistent. "You can't keep this bottled up. We've lost too many. It's time to honor what was by sharing what today looks like." That challenge reverberated deeply. Jack's instincts screamed at him to retreat, but a flicker of defiance rose within. They had fought together, hadn't he? He owed it to them to reveal the truths he feared. As he wrestled with the turmoil inside, Jack knew the threshold had grown even stronger, a confusing blend of past connections and present vulnerability. Silence stretched, heavy with emotional weight, then something shifted in him. "I'll go," he blurted out, surprising himself. The roar of acceptance surged through him, forcing the facade to crack further open. "Good," Mike replied, nodding approvingly. "But start by telling your story, Jack. Not just to us, but to yourself too." It was in that moment of realization that he acknowledged the imminent metamorphosis of his journey, and a newfound purpose began to unfurl within him. Jack's eyes met Emma's, and he could almost see the dawning comprehension. But just as momentum built around the impending revelation, the weight of the rifle at his side reminded him of the duality of personal conflict, a continuous battle of loyalty to his past and the pressing need for redemption. The choice was clear yet entangled, and as Jack prepared himself to share, he felt time folding in on itself once again, reminding him that just beyond this moment lay another confrontation he had yet to face. What would he unearth if Mike pushed him to connect deeper? Jack inhaled, steeling himself for the next wave of honesty, but the shadows of the past writhed even closer as the undeniable whisper of a familiar name echoed in his mind. What about Kyle? The tension unfurled, drawing him back to the most pivotal secrets he had yet to reveal. Would he be ready to confront the ghosts that still lingered, pushing him once again to the edge of vulnerability? Jack sat back in his chair, eyes locked on Mike, while the weight of the past pressed down around him. The challenge Mike had posed loomed like a specter, relentless and impossible to dismiss. The air in the room shifted, thickening with unspoken truths and shared history. What about Kyle? Jack's internal voice begged for answers, but the words remained unvoiced. The very mention of Kyle felt like opening a vein, a raw, seeping wound he had learned to bandage with silence. The guilt threatened to choke him, yet Mike's unwavering gaze ignited a flicker of resolve. Why now? He found himself questioning, not just Mike, but his own hesitance. If he had taken the leap to attend the reunion, it meant confronting all the feelings he had buried. But the real question was whether he was ready to unearth them. "Because it's time," Mike replied, as if reading Jack's thoughts. "This isn't just about a reunion. It's about you reclaiming your story. You can't keep living in the shadows." His steadfastness was both a challenge and an anchor, and in that moment, Jack felt the disparate pieces of himself shift slightly, as if awakening from a long slumber. Jack's pulse quickened as another wave of nostalgia crashed over him. Images of Kyle flashed in his mind, his laughter, his fierce loyalty, the day they had fought side by side. But with those memories came the riptide of loss, the grief that had dulled over time yet never truly left him. How could he possibly share that with anyone, let alone himself? "Have you forgotten him?" Mike's voice was softer now, the gruff edges rounded by understanding. "He's part of your strength." Jack exhaled slowly, wrestling with the urge to retreat once more. But beneath the layers of fear, he felt a burgeoning curiosity. Who was he without all the pain? Taking a breath, he felt Emma's compassionate silence wrap around him like a cocoon. Here was a woman who didn't judge, who believed there was something within him strong enough to face even the darkest days. What if sharing this makes it real? What if it breaks everything? He thought. Yet, underneath the fear lay a spark of desire to redefine himself beyond the shadows of war. "Okay," Jack said with newfound determination, "I'll talk about Kyle." The very act of acknowledging that name felt monumental. Each syllable reverberated with the dread and relief of finally opening Pandora's box. Mike leaned back, the corners of his mouth curling into a knowing smile. "Let it out, brother. Honor him, the way you should have long ago." Jack stared into the distance as he unspooled the tale of their bond. He spoke of their first deployment, youthful and eager, filled with reckless bravado. How they had exchanged stories of their families while the world outside felt so far away. The laughter, the camaraderie, it surfaced like corks breaking water, flooding Jack with bittersweet memories. As he shared more details, he felt the dam he had built begin to crack. The last day was different. "We were over in that dusty village," he stumbled, caught in a fray of emotion. The scene played in vivid colors, before twisting into the muted grays of loss. "I couldn't save him," he choked out, each word feeling like a release. Instantly, the shared silence became palpable. Emma leaned closer, her eyes glistening with understanding. Mike's expression mirrored both respect and encouragement, signaling that this was where healing started. By facing what lay hidden, Jack pressed on, recounting the horror of that moment, the desperate attempts to get Kyle out alive. The haunting cries of hopelessness reverberated in his mind, and as he spoke, the air thickened with the weight of his confession. The shame that had cloaked him for years began to peel away with every syllable. "Jack," Mike interjected gently, "you weren't alone in that moment. Those decisions were made in a chaotic war zone. None of us are infallible." Yet, in that heavy acknowledgement, Jack felt the sting of responsibility seep deeper. The question of redemption loomed larger, echoing in unrelenting waves. Could he absolve himself of the guilt tied so closely to Kyle's memory? The conversations weaved into an intricate tapestry of healing, each thread revealing not just loss, but the potential for growth. The act of sharing sparked the recognition that there was power in vulnerability, and perhaps, in time, even the path to forgiveness. But just as the moment crystallized into clarity, Jack's mind flickered to darker corners. What if at this reunion, they celebrated lives not lost, but scars unhealed? Could he face the very people whose presence might completely unravel him? What would it mean to face his demons head-on in front of those who understood the sacrifices made, lived through the same storms? Jack's heart raced, urging him to question the very fabric of his evolving identity, and as Mike's steady gaze held him captive, he felt it, the impending collision of past and present, the moment when he would no longer run. The journey ahead looked daunting, shadowed by uncertainty. Would he be brave enough to face friends turned strangers and rediscover who he truly was beyond the memory of loss? The answer brewed within him, igniting an urgency for the reunion ahead. "Are you ready?" Mike asked quietly, his voice unwavering. "Ready to confront not just my past but what I can become," Jack whispered, the current of determination rising within him, and just like that, the question hung in the air: would he walk through that door into vulnerability, ready to embrace life again? Jack stood at the threshold of his next steps, feeling the weight of shared history pulsate around him, both invigorating and frightening. Mike's affirmation echoed in his mind. He had agreed to confront his past, but as the reality of the reunion loomed near, uncertainty began to nibble at the roots of his newfound determination. Who would he be in that space where old faces would collide with his regret? The proximity to vulnerability felt electric. Jack's heart raced with both anticipation and dread, a storm brewing within, a collective representation of his fears and hopes. What if the laughter faded into silence? What if their eyes were mirrors reflecting his pain instead of kindness? Emma's gentle encouragement served as his anchor. She believed in his capacity to rediscover himself. "Remember the training," she whispered in his mind, "you survived the battlefield. This is a different kind of fight." That sentiment stirred something within him, a flicker of confidence igniting, but the enormity of sharing Kyle's memory haunted him. Would his words ring hollow, a shallow echo of the bond they had? As he played out scenarios in his mind, a familiar unease crept upward like a dark vine coiling around his thoughts. What if the anger of loss projected outward? Would he find understanding, or would it breed resentment? Determined to carve out clarity, Jack embarked on a journey of self-reflection. He picked up a pen and poured his thoughts onto paper, desperately trying to sculpt the chaos in his mind into something more coherent. The weight of guilt was an immovable mountain, but with the rhythm of ink gliding across the page, he sought to unearth strength instead of sorrow. "Adversity reveals character," he scrawled, sealing the sentiment under a barrage of concentrated thoughts. The act was cathartic, as if the ink bled the heaviness from his spirit. Discovery dawned in this engagement with words. He wasn't merely seeking to honor Kyle, he aimed to awaken the elements of that friendship within himself. But the realization struck him: he had to face not only the memories of camaraderie but also the bitter taste of unresolved grief and shifting identity. Each stroke of the pen yielded revelations. The quiet moments spent in Kyle's company were laced with lessons. The grit of survival didn't just lie in physical battles, but in emotional ones as well. Jack identified fragments of resilience woven into their shared experiences he had diminished by labeling them as nothing but loss. He found himself stalling at one particular memory, the rusted rifle belonging to Kyle, its worn barrel a testament to the pivotal moments they had faced together. Holding that thought close, Jack's breathing steadied. He envisioned stepping into the reunion, not as a broken soldier haunted by ghosts but as a warrior fortified by the memories of love and laughter, proud but vulnerable. Could he not transform the scars of war into stories of courage instead? Every word he penned felt like a salve on open wounds, an invitation to heal rather than hide. The daunting realization replaced the suffocating guilt. Remembering Kyle was crucial, not just for his own redemption, but for the collective memory of those who had known him. Their laughter deserved to echo freely, unfettered by loss. That he put down the pen, letting the ink dry, a small victory, but significant. Jack looked ahead, envisioning the faces he would encounter, bolstered by the notion that honoring Kyle meant embracing the joy he once brought into their lives. The rekindling of his own identity felt radical yet liberating. Suddenly, an idea sparked. Mike's challenge to reclaim his story morphed into a greater mission, a chance to foster dialogues about whom they had become, the real battles they still fought. As he prepared for the reunion, he felt the unmistakable surge of determination course through him. This was no longer just about confronting the past, but about elevating their shared legacy. Jack's internal monologue shifted. He wouldn't just step through the door but burst through it. With the knowledge that fear would not dictate his narrative any longer. His path converged into an exhilarating question: what if this reunion turned out to be the beginning of a new chapter altogether, one where their stories wove together into a tapestry of healing? He shot a glance toward the door, the weight gone, replaced with an electric possibility, an opportunity to connect, share, and redefine every scar. As he turned to leave the room, the future loomed with uncertainty, yet felt palpably inviting. Suddenly, the question reverberated deep within: would he have the courage to articulate the evolution of his narrative, all the hidden truths? The moment to test not just his strength, but the legacy of friendship awaited him. The days passed quickly, each moment brimming with expectation. As the date of the reunion approached, Jack felt both buoyed and overwhelmed by the weight of his decision. His room transformed into a shrine of thoughts pinned on corkboards, photos, fragments of memories, remnants of Kyle's laughter now etched into his consciousness. Determination surged anew in him. He needed to prepare not just his words but the essence of who he would present to the world, strong, yet human. Each evening, he revisited his reflections, weaving together narratives stitched with both grief and gratitude. As he crafted these stories, he discovered that they were gateways into understanding the pain of loss transformed into lessons on resilience. On the night before the reunion, Jack sat at his desk, his mind racing. The familiar walls of his room closed in, filled with shadows of those he had lost. A knot twisted in his stomach, and for a moment, doubt whispered its insidious suggestions. Was he truly ready to face those feelings? Could he show his vulnerability without losing himself again? Swallowing hard, he focused on the years he had spent unfurling layers of emotional armor. Adversity had taught him valuable truths, not just about survival but about connection. He thought of Emma standing steadfast by him and felt a rush of gratitude for her unwavering faith. She had refused to let him forge ahead alone, reminding him that vulnerability was not weakness but a form of courage. Jack laid his hands on the pen once more, allowing the ink to flow freely. It became an extension of his resolve, signaling a departure from fear into consciousness. There were new truths to articulate. His grief was not a bane, but rather a shadow of love. Each word pouring onto the page became a stepping stone toward liberation, unraveling the bittersweetness of reminiscence. Still, there lingered a sense of trepidation. The moment he assembled with old friends would be fraught with potentially explosive emotions. The prospect of honesty loomed like a cliff edge, enticing yet terrifying. What if they couldn't understand? What if sharing Kyle's memory ignited conflict rather than healing? He glanced at the clock. The hands seemed to taunt him, ticking loudly as the hour drew near. It was time to escape the confines of his thoughts. He needed not only to confront the past but also to actively engage with it. This reunion wasn't just a gathering, it was a chance to recalibrate his identity in the presence of those who had shared in both his joys and sorrows. Finally, the morning of the reunion dawned with a profound clarity. He donned his navy shirt, the fabric a weighty reminder of where he had come from. It felt a little like armor he would shed as he stepped into the culmination of his preparations. Power surged through him, he was ready for this fight, armed with the recognition that it was about more than his journey alone. As he approached the venue, the familiar landscape of shared trails and stories arose within him. Yet as he gathered near the entrance, an unexpected chill set upon him. Would the echoes of laughter drown out memories steeped in sorrow? The risk of falling prey to anger loomed over him like a storm cloud, ready to burst at the slightest spark. Jack inhaled deeply, grounding himself in the present moment. It was now or never. Peaceful moments melted into tense anticipation. This was not just a recollection, this was an emergence of a new identity carved from the past. As he stepped into the gathering, he faced a myriad of familiar faces. No longer would he be the ghost drifting through memories. No, today, Jack would reclaim his narrative, a storyteller ready to bridge the gap between loss and celebration, vulnerability and courage. And just as he advanced toward the first familiar face, a thought collided with his consciousness. Could he speak and confront the deepest questions of their shared experiences? Would his truth resonate fully, or fracture the ground beneath their fragile empathy? The moment was charged with everything left unspoken, every emotion raw and potent. The time to face the echoes of his past and the questions lurking within this new chapter had finally come. As Jack stepped into the venue, the vibrant atmosphere enveloped him like a thick fog. Voices melded into a cacophony of laughter and nostalgia, each note striking at the core of his resolve. He scanned the room, faces animated in shared memories, yet he felt like an outsider, teetering on the precipice between reunion and reflection. His heart raced, a quickened pulse that mirrored the collective excitement. In the corner, a small group huddled with animated expressions, sharing a joke that had likely traveled through years of camaraderie. Jack noticed their eyes flicker toward him, a fleeting moment of recognition followed by whispers. Doubt twisted within him, their shared joy seemed distant, an echo of a life he once belonged to. He breathed deeply, forcing himself to take a few cautious steps into the fray. Every social norm pulsed around him, a rhythm of interaction that he had to synchronize with, and yet he felt drawn to the edges. He had spent too long hiding from discomfort, and here it was standing before him, unabashed and alive. Suddenly, Emma appeared at his side, her steady presence grounding him. "You're doing this, Jack," she whispered, her confidence spilling over him like warm sunlight. "You've come so far." There was no disbelief in her voice, just an unwavering support that ignited a flicker of courage within him. He nodded, gathering momentum from her words. He approached a cluster of familiar faces, the memories of shared laughter and late-night secrets rushing back like a tide he could neither stop nor reverse. They paused mid-conversation, surprise and interest mingling in their expressions. "Jack!" one of them exclaimed, and suddenly, the moment felt tangible. "Hey," he responded, his voice steadier than he anticipated. "It's been a long time. How've you been?" Another chimed in, their question bright with earnest concern. Jack could hear the resonance of genuine care beneath the surface, yet it felt like a gauntlet thrown down. Could he convey his true journey in this casual atmosphere? As he hesitated, the unacknowledged weight of Kyle's absence loomed larger. The visceral thud of grief felt palpable, yet recalling how it threaded through his experiences offered clarity. He realized that his story was more than a recount of loss, it was interlaced with lessons learned and resilience built. "It's been tough," he finally said, the courage surging back, "but I'm working through it." The room fell silent, the lightness momentarily suspended. The vulnerability of his admission hung in the air, waiting to be met with understanding or judgment. Conversations quieted, eyes focused intently on him, either seeking connection or bracing for the unknown. One of his old friends stepped forward, kindness enveloping her words. "We're here for you, Jack. We all miss him." The sincerity forged an invisible bridge between them, a space where shared grief and memorial could coexist. Jack felt warmth replace the chill that had gripped him moments before. Diving deeper into these connections transformed his sense of isolation into a collective experience, and he realized the importance of giving voice to his emotions. With a renewed sense of purpose, he leaned against the wall, gathering his thoughts as laughter resumed, now a comforting backdrop to his struggles. It was a reminder of the good intertwined with the pain. Jack began to contemplate not just his own narrative but how he could invite others to participate in this healing journey. That he saw another group, some familiar faces from their shared past, laugh and reminisce over memories of Kyle, and he felt a spark ignite in him again, a yearning to share, to reveal how deeply their experiences intertwined. Would he have the courage to address the sea of emotions that flowed beneath the surface of their facade? Or would he retreat once more into silence, letting the moment pass? As Jack prepared to step closer, he sensed that the true test lay ahead. This gathering was not merely a recollection of the past, it was a potential confrontation with their collective grief and an invitation for healing. The moment had come to confront these narratives, to challenge how they could enrich one another's journeys. But just as he readied himself to speak, the door swung open, and a new figure entered, the presence of an old rival, someone who had once fractured their circle of friendship. The room shifted, tension coiling tightly around Jack's chest as he realized that this reunion might hold far more complexity than he had anticipated. Jack's eyes darted to the newcomer, a tall figure with familiar swagger that immediately ignited memories, some painful, others tinged with nostalgia. Kyle had always spoken of him with an air of dramatic disdain, a rival who seemed to thrive on competition. Now, standing in the doorway with a cocky grin, he drew the energies in the room taut like a bowstring. Jack's heart sank as the specter of their shared past loomed over him. "Look who it is," the man called out, his voice dripping with an edge that sliced through the conversations. The man of the hour. Didn't he think you would actually show up? Every instinct urged Jack to retreat, yet he felt Emma's presence like a safety tether. She shot him a reassuring look. It encased him in a strange blend of courage and lingering fear. This was not merely a personal confrontation, it was a resurrection of old wounds and an unsettling test of his growth since losing Kyle. He steadied himself, raising his chin defiantly. The laughter that had washed over him moments before faded, leaving a hollow ache. "And yet, here I am," Jack replied, forcing resolve into his tone. It was a simple statement, but in that moment, it was weighted with all the growth he had fought so hard to achieve. "So nice to see the sad little boy trying to be a man," the rival shot back, laughter mingling with disbelief from the gathered crowd. Jack could feel their eyes on him, judging, curious, encouraging, perhaps. "Why don't you keep the cheap shots to yourself?" Jack gained momentum, a rush of determination surging through him. He stepped forward, willing to confront his past with him. "This isn't the time or the place. So you think you can just come back and act like everything's normal?" The man continued, a smirk plastered on his face. "What makes you think anyone actually cares what happens in your pathetic little life now?" Jack's chest constricted, flames of anger and vulnerability igniting within him. The memory of Kyle's laughter merged with the sting of the rivalry, the hurtful remarks carving deeper than ever before. It would have been too easy to shrink back and silence the tumult within, yet that very silence was what had landed him in this disruptive moment. He vowed it would not define him anymore. "Normal?" Jack's voice rose, every syllable infused with purpose. "Normal was never real for any of us." Not after he hesitated, the memory of Kyle's absence cutting through his words. He could almost feel the room holding its breath, anticipating his next move. His gaze caught Emma's, her unwavering encouragement wrapping around him like armor. "I've been through hell," he continued, finding footing in his surroundings. "We all have. But I'm here now, ready to talk about it, ready to heal." Murmurs ran through the crowd, some nodding in agreement, others clearly uncomfortable. Yet, Jack pressed on, determined to reclaim his narrative. "Kyle deserves more than just our grief. He deserves our stories, our honesty, and I want to share that." Just as his words found a rhythm, Jack felt the energy shift. The rival's grin faltered, uncertainty flickering beneath the surface. It was as though Jack had peeled back the layers of bravado, exposing an insecurity that existed so long beneath. But then the rival's expression hardened once more. "You think that sharing your pain makes you strong? It just proves you're weak," he shot back, an underlying desperation in his voice. Something snapped within Jack. The anger that had momentarily swelled dissipated, replaced by something cooler, more calculating. This confrontation held the potential to be transformative not just for him, but for everyone who lingered close enough to listen. Maybe strength isn't about never feeling pain. Maybe it's about standing here and owning it, despite the scars. The tension surged in the room, thick and palpable. Conversations faded, leaving only Jack's declaration, echoed by the silence of the crowd. They were a constellation of unresolved emotions, and suddenly, Jack felt the gravity of their presence pushing him forward. But then the rival pushed closer, the challenge still alive in his eyes. "You don't want to go there, Jack," he warned, inviting Jack to step into a space far darker than he had anticipated. As Jack prepared to respond, he recognized two potent truths: this confrontation was altering the atmosphere entirely, and there was still a part of him, a battlefield of old fears and resentments, that he would have to navigate if he wanted to break free once and for all. Would he find the strength to confront both his rival and the lingering shadows of insecurity? The answer loomed just out of reach, and Jack could feel anticipation tightening in the air like a noose. The moment had come to decide: would he crumble under pressure, or would he emerge, transformed and renewed? Jack stood resolute, the atmosphere in the room pulsating with anticipation. His rival's taunts echoed in the air, but he felt a shift in himself, a burgeoning strength that came not from bravado but from vulnerability. This moment hadn't just arrived, it had built up over the years, a culmination of losses and victories, shadows and light. "I'm not afraid of weakness," Jack declared, each word a deliberate step into the light. "What I fear is silence, what I fear is forgetting." The words hung between them, vibrating with intensity. An unexpected murmur cascaded through the crowd. Old friends, once scattered by time and grief, began to lean in, their expressions shifting toward understanding. This was how conversations began, through authenticity. The walls he had meticulously constructed began crumbling, brick by heavy brick, as he embraced the power of the truth that now coursed through him. Jack could see it clearly, a group on the brink of catharsis, aching to share their stories just as he had been. His words had become a bridge not only to his past but to everyone who had, like him, faced the brutal intersections of life and death. "Strength isn't about hiding our pain, it's about confronting it," he said. "If I stand here with you, it's because I want to share what it means to lose a brother, to carry the weight of memories and to celebrate the life that was, not just mourn the loss." As the last syllable left his lips, a collective inhale swept through the gathering. He recognized the flicker in their eyes, mirroring his own understanding. For the first time in ages, Jack felt aligned with his past and present. Those he stood with weren't just faces from history, they were threads woven into the tapestry of his experiences. The laughter that had once felt so distant now pierced through the ache of remembrance. Emotions churned in the room, emotions that he had once considered the enemy. Perhaps this was what healing looked like, a shared embrace of discomfort. "Let us honor Kyle," someone in the crowd called out, the voice strong and sure. "We owe him that." Jack turned, seeing familiar faces connect in that moment. Continuing with the momentum, he stepped into the center of this potent gathering. "The stories we carry are not mere memories, they are legacies," he urged. "Who we become is shaped by the battles we've fought together. Let this be a space where we can reclaim those narratives of valor, of hope, of brotherhood. The triumph is in the sharing." A wave of applause rippled through the crowd, igniting a surge of energy that felt electric. Those old friends began exchanging glances, nudging each other to share. Stories erupted, stories of Kyle's infectious laughter, of times in the trenches where their bonds deepened, and of lessons learned from bravery and loss. Jack stood as a witness, a facilitator of shared experiences. The very act of exposing their truths transformed the air from tension to empowerment. And just like that, he understood, this is why he had come. In the reflection of the moment, Jack felt his apprehension dissolve. With each tale spun, the vulnerabilities cloaked in fears morphed into expressions of rebirth. The rival's words, once sharp and slicing, dulled under the weight of honesty enveloping the venue. "Let us make a pact," Jack proposed as silence shrouded the room once more, eyes zeroing in on him with expectancy. "Let us promise to revisit these stories to ensure they thrive in our gatherings, not wilt in silence. We exist through each other." One by one, nods formed, first hesitantly, then with growing conviction. Jack felt his heart swell, vibrating with life and connectivity, solidifying his place in this community of brave souls. As the last sobering words hung heavy, Jack's eyes flickered to Emma, her expression radiant with pride, an inspiring anchor amidst the evolving tide of camaraderie. She had sparked the journey, now he was leading them all through the shadows. This reunion had morphed into far more than he had anticipated. It wasn't merely an acknowledgement of grief, it became a testament to perseverance, a tribe rediscovering its strength. Jack's chest swelled with certainty. He had summoned the courage to confront his past, he had chosen to honor Kyle's legacy. He felt a profound sense of belonging, and that sense propelled him forward. Jack understood this wasn't merely about speaking a story, it was about reclaiming his narrative, his identity. With a deep breath, he relished the moment, the achievement born from vulnerability and shared understanding. Jack Turner stood there, not an old man tethered to his past, but a beacon of courage, embodying every ounce of transformation they so richly deserved. The applause swelled into a vibrant chorus, each clap driving the pulse of unity home. Jack smiled, feeling fortified by these collective echoes, aware now that their layered histories could intertwine to create a brighter, more authentic future. He had conquered more than the shadows of his past that day. He had emerged renewed, recognized, and revered. Jack had reclaimed his truth, not just for himself but for the legacy of those who came before him. And now, he walked with a firm step into tomorrows defined by hope, not haunted by loss. As the reunion progressed, Jack knew the defining moment was just the beginning. It was time to write new chapters, where every echo of laughter resounded with love, resilience, and the triumph of the human spirit. Now it's your turn to be part of our journey. You need to subscribe now to this channel to experience the next exclusive emotional tales of triumph and redemption. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and continue sharing these transformative stories. Comment below with your reactions to Jack's journey and your theories about what comes next. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion and feel inspired to confront their own pasts. Don't wait even one more second to show your support.